This one's in Houston. Okay, so thumbs up. Let's see here. Have you read my articles? How was that? And Stephen, have you read the article?
Yes.
Wow.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the first one I've actually been able to. I've got time to read all of them before our talk, and I thought it was super cool. Definitely helpful for me because I deal with patients going through stuff like this, and it's just helpful to read about it to like help form the ideas and that issue they bring up about emptiness and how a lot of Westerners react to the idea of emptiness. I think that was particularly helpful.
I just got them.
Yeah, and Stephen, have you read my articles?
No, not yet. I was a little bit busy. I apologize.
Okay. Have you read that articles? Those two articles?
Yeah, motherfucker. I read it once and I read it twice too. I think, yeah. I think I can be able to understand, but I think if I read it 3 or 4 more times, I think it would help. Yeah.
All right. Let's go over what we discussed, and after that we go to the articles. One. Okay, let's see here. So we have permission to use the articles. How have you been?
I'm well. How are you?
You got my message? You got,
I did.
Would you like to stay back and I can talk to you briefly about that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Stay back after this and then about that. Oh, can you hear me now?
It's not coming in clearly.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
I mean, could you stay back after this and I can talk to you?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Thank you. So let me share with you one more time. So we have Jeanette. You can see that she's an artist in the Zen in the Rochester, New York, where she stayed here, and she power our temple online. And welcome her. She has allergy today. Anyway, so let me go back to.
Tay, can I say something real quick? Rochester, New York was the Roshi Philip Kapleau wrote The Three Pillars of Zen, and that's the first book I read on Buddhism. And I ended up going to that Zen center with my family when I was in high school. And we got to meet Roshi Philip Kapleau, but then also Roshi Bodhin Sensei Kolhid too. And I went back a couple times since then. So that's cool to bump into someone else who's been there. I've been wanting to go back for so many years and just haven't made the time.
Do you came to that center before you went up to Poland or after that?
I think it was before Corridon. Yeah, before Corridon. Yeah, because it was. Oh, it's hard to say. I'm not sure. It might have been after Corridon.
Your name is Ian?
Yeah.
Oh, Liam. Okay. Yes, my name is Jeanette. Okay. Oh, yeah, my with sharing the story. He's now Roshi Bodhidharma. And yeah, he's still there. He's still teaching. And yeah, and they're even online. So we can.
Amala's there too now. Again, I thought she had left and started another center. Didn't she, Amala Wrightson?
Yeah. Amala is my ordination mentor, and she is in Auckland, New Zealand. So that's where she's from, and that's where she started a Zen center with her husband, Richard.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, last time I was there, I did a 3-day session in like 2000, I don't know, maybe 2008 or 2009. And yeah, it was Roshi Bodhin Sensei Kolhid by then, but he wasn't at the session. I did a reorientation to Zen, and he was at that. So it was cool to see him then, but it's been like over 10 years.
Yeah, and so you were at the retreat center when you did that?
Yeah.
If it was, yeah.
I initially went there when they were building it. So like some of the spackling of the screws, I did a little bit of that, like just very small amount.
Small world.
Okay, thank you. So again, let's go back. We discussed about prevalence condition. Let's go back here. Can you see, right? Can you see?
Yes.
Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah. So last time we talked about ignorance, mental formation. Let's be happy to practice about karma, and because karma, we had the actually we have consciousness go with us in the limitless time, and when we have consciousness, we have name and form. Name is mean our mind, form is mean body. When the fetus enter the wombs of the mothers, that's what we call name and form. The mind is the name, form is body, and the first consciousness go to the body is the eight consciousness. We discussed about the storage consciousness is carry all information that we have seen in the past life, good, bad, and so forth. And due to the name and form, the body and the mind, so the fetus develop the body into systems, organs. And that's what we have here, systems, organ here. Whichever way here, the eyes is the nose, the tongue, the touch, and the mind. And because of systems, organs, we have contact, right? Contact with external conditions, and that's why we're here. We have here. Okay, the eyes, the object of the eye is like their forms, and it have the eye consciousness. If you stimulate, analyze whichever of the form, beautiful form, ugly form, and so forth. The ears with the sound, the nose with the smell, the tongue with the taste, the body with the touch, and so forth. This is all the contact. So this is simple idea, simple information. When we have a contact with the external object, like for example, we see a flowers, right? And we like a flowers. We don't like that flower. We have the feeling, we have good feeling with that flower, or we don't have good feeling. That's what's about here. So in contact, we have feelings, sensation. Or when we taste the food, right? Whether it's hot chili or hamburger, whichever we put in our mouth, we have good sensation, good feeling, or bad feeling about those food. And from those feeling, we have the desire. We want to have
joy. We want to have more of that hamburger. We want to have more of that ice cream and so forth. That's what we talk about here for the two particles that I said to you, the Buddhist and certifiable perspective on emotion and well-being. So these two articles, this one is much easier to read, and the other article is talk about maneuver with the difficult emotional terrain. So that's what are the two important articles that we want to talk today. So, William, can you share what you understand about this article then? If you can, please.
Yes. One of the first things I remember, I think it was this one, because they're going to run together a little bit, is that there's no word for emotion in Sanskrit and in Buddhism that's not addressed. That really struck me as interesting, and the concept of sukha was one that I had heard before but had forgotten about. So it was I mean, it heard it in other ways but didn't have it associated with the term sukha. That that happiness which doesn't depend upon any condition but is inherent to our mind and nature. And I mean, this is like, I think probably for all of us, but like this really excited me to see this because, you know, I have these repeated cycles of getting into some sort of emotional state that is disruptive, and, you know, being in it, knowing the teachings, it can sometimes be difficult to make the right choice to allow everything to subside. But I just recognize that like they're really good reminders to help keep the pathway out of that clearer. And so yeah, I liked how they're trying to integrate the Buddhist concepts into research and into psychology and clear away the misunderstandings, like the misunderstanding about emptiness, where a lot of us, when you first hear about it, it doesn't actually seem like emptiness. It seems like a lack of something. It seems like there's some negativity, or there's some like absence. And so I really like how they conceptualize it. But that was in the other article. I apologize. That part was in the other article. So yeah, I read the second article. I read the other article second last night. So I don't. This one is not as clearly defined in my mind because I didn't review it again today. So without kind of looking through it and prompting myself, I can't talk too much about it.
Yeah, I can focus on this one. You understand? How about?
What struck me was the sitting with difficult feelings and emotions, and how often we try to avoid those situations by not thinking about them or creating the back of our mind, so to speak. But the article goes on to say that the best way, or the Buddhist view, is to sit and recognize the emotion, but not to dwell on or entertain it. And that was very helpful to me when I often go through cycles also where I'm experiencing sadness or anger, and I have to just sit back with the feeling and try to recognize it as something that's impermanent, something that's not going to last.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so let me show you the times. Yeah, so here the craving, the hatred and delusion, and that's what make this one here, the desire and the craving here in the circle. And the Buddha say, if you cut off this link, the ordering will be falling apart. As well as we have the desire and craving, get stuck there. And anger is the other side of the craving. So that's why this article I choose this speak well to our topic here. Yeah, but Michael, you would like to have anything?
I'm really sorry, Ty. I think I'm going to have to get out of the discussion and come back in, if that's all right, because I'm not hearing anything that you're saying.
Oh, sorry.
It's very unclear. I can hear the sound of your voice, but I can't make out the words. I could hear William just fine. So I don't know whether it's my sound or yours, but I'm going to leave and try to come back in if that's all right.
We hear you clearly. Yeah, we hear your voice clearly.
It's not clear what you're saying.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Anyway.
And Stephen, have you read that article? It's the first one?
No, I got home late, so I did not get a chance to read anything yet. Sorry.
Okay. What do you understand about the first articles?
Yeah, more factor. The first one is about emotion. Emotion is something that when emotion arises in us, it would affect our thinking, our actions. It also affects the way we do, the way we act. So we need to know how to learn how to deal with the emotion, and in order to attain true happiness. So I think yeah, I think it take some training, more intense training in order to attain happiness. I think, yeah, more like that.
So, Michael, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Much better. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you. Would you share anything about the first article?
I'm like William. I'm getting the articles a little. They're blurring together a little bit for me. I'm in the middle of grading papers for a summer term, so I had to read them both back to back early this afternoon. And which of the articles is it that you need to think about, or? Okay. I think one of the things that struck me, and I don't remember whether it's in this article or the other, I apologize, but one of the things that struck me, because I know a little bit about Western psychology, about Freud and Jung and all those fellas, and it's always seemed to me that Western psychology is a kind of relies a lot on, it's almost like battlefield surgery. It relies an awful lot on, you're really disrupted, you're really upset and disturbed, so you go to the psychologist. And what I see in these articles is a really refreshing emphasis on wellness, on maintaining a kind of stability and happiness rather than just patching up psychological wounds. And I noticed that in both of them. And I think that's one of the things that, that I see Western psychology beginning to learn from Buddhism. There's a psychologist called James Hillman, whose work this reminds me of in some ways. It's different in other ways, but that whole sense of cultivating a stable and happy life, that psychology moves you in that direction rather than just kind of healing the scars.
Yeah, that's why we have the term mental disorder. Disorder means something wrong, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of what do you call psychological path, right? So it means something wrong with the mind. So in Western psychology, it's based upon the duality, good and bad, order and disorder.
Yeah.
Wellness and sickness, that have duality. In Buddhism, no, we go beyond that. It's not the nature. It's the nature of our life. When we talk about nature, that means it just happen. If we know how to utilize this, we bring happiness. If we don't know, if we get house and get stuff, we suffer. That's all. So we don't need to use or transform. I mean that if we don't use, we don't need to delete the disorder. We don't need to fix that. We just get transformed it. That's the whole notion of Buddhism. Let me give one example. You know what's meant by CBT, cognitive behavioral therapies. So they use to treat the depression people, right? And in general, when the patient comes, right, the psychologist would tell them, okay, you have depression, you feel low, you have all kind of negative thought in your mind. Why don't you think on the other side of the spectrum? Think about things in a positive way to lift up your mind, to lift up your spirit. Yes, sometimes it works, sometimes it may not. So that's why they use what they call mindfulness, cognitive, MBCT, mindfulness cognitive behavioral therapies. So instead of thinking in the other side of the spectrum, in Buddhist approach, you let go of those things. You don't need to think about them. Or either you let go of them, you don't need to think about them, but and also you may recognize them as the way they are. You embrace them. You recognize and embrace them. You make friends of them. You start fighting with them. You accept them. So that's the beauty of Buddhist mindfulness practice. So that could bring the everlasting happiness for those patients. Otherwise, if we try to subdue something, the more force we try to subdue them, the stronger they will resist. What we call, the more we resist, the more it persists. So that's why in this article it's mentioned about, again, the three poisons of the mind: hatred, craving, and delusion. And again, the authors point out clearly the problems with our own mind. Okay, let's go down here, and after that we can go to the other articles. The craving. They say the mental process based on unrealistic between self and other. We want to get things for ourselves. We have the delusion that we are attached to what is me, what's mine. That's why we pray for other things for ourselves. And that's why something comes when we cannot get them. Or let me go back to Vivian. Have you read the articles, Vivian?
I didn't get a chance to, no.
No? Okay. Anyway. Yes. Dr. Michael, you want to say something?
No, I guess the thing that has struck me the most, and it's really kind of simple in regards to the articles, is how the Buddhist philosophy and psychology direct us toward a well-lived life rather than toward repairing damage. And to me, that's been the most striking thing that I drew from both of the articles.
Yeah. Again, when we deal with hatred, the same way too, because the notion of I, right? We try to resent, or we try to fight back with the things that we don't want to help ourselves, right? For example, if we don't like to eat certain type of food, and if some people put the food on the table, that type of food on the table, we try to resist that. We try to fight back. No, that's not my food. Take it away. Right? But of course, when they put some kind of favorite food, yeah, we want to have more because we have the notion of I like to have that. I like to keep that. That's why the notion of what we call here in the 12 condition right here. As long as we have so much desire, so much craving for those things, we have the tendency to process it, to control it, to hold it for ourselves. That's called possession. Because of that, we crave more. That's what the whole process is about. That's how this article compatible with this chart, with this terminal condition. And of course, let's see here. Let me go back to the other articles. Yeah.
So we can see that process even in meditation. As we're sitting there, thoughts come into the mind.
Can we hear?
Nope.
Yeah, so I was just saying that this process that he was talking about, I mean, we can see that in our meditation, that when we are doing our sitting and a thought come into the mind, and we try to push it away, it doesn't go away. We've attached to it. And it's the same way with a good thought or something that we want to think. We are attaching to that too. We are grabbing hold of and holding on to it. And really it's just, it hurts us. And we do the same thing with our psychological states. We push them away, or we grab a hold on them, and it seems that the instruction is just like in meditation, is just to refocus our minds on whatever it is that we're doing, rather than on pushing away the thought or the psychological state, the sadness, or the depression.
Yeah, so that's why when we practice meditation, it's so important that whichever thought come up in our mind, just accept that. If we fight with them, we have two tendencies. Usually we have two tendencies. Either we fight with them, either we block them out, or we attach to those images or information that pop in our mind. That's why it gets stuck there. And whichever happen here in daily life, we follow that pattern. So that's why something comes when we try to block something that we don't want. If they occur again, we try to block. We don't want to. That's why we suffer. We frustrate. We have so much anxiety that we don't want to see. We don't want to hear those information, those image, picture. But they still come to us, especially the one that we don't like, what we call the enemies. Or let's say, as a teacher, right, as a professor, we may not like to see bad behavior student, but they're there. Nothing we can change, or we can accept. Whichever thing they do, that's their business. We just here to teach. And like William, so when you may have some rough day with your patient, right? Some rough patient, right? It's not easy to do, right?
Yeah. Generally, if I'm relaxed and present, then I can very easily, very smoothly accommodate people. But if I've kind of tipped out of just being present and relaxed, and I'm in this getting things done mode, and I feel like a patient is being an obstruction, then I'll come home, I'll feel super stressed out. But the same sort of thing can happen if my mind state is different, then it's no issue. I don't even feel like talking to other people about it.
So you rate the student paper right up to Michael with sometimes we love the student that they, as much as they don't make a mistake, that's great for us to give them a good grade. But if somehow they don't pay attention on their grammatical errors, or style, and so forth, it's still wrong for us too. Dr. Michael, right?
I couldn't understand you. The sound, there's something in the sound tonight.
I mean that we are teacher and professor. If we have good students who write a perfect paper, we love to give them good grade. But if somehow they don't pay attention on their grammatical errors, style, it's still wrong for us to read those papers, right? You follow me?
This is frustrating.
You can check your microphone.
Tay, I think what's happening is the computer that's far away from you is the one that's sensing the sound. The one that we see in the camera, I think that's the one that the sound is on. I think the computer close to you has the sound off.
This one. Can you hear me now? It's okay now?
Very clearly.
Much better.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Thank you.
So what was your question?
My question is that as a teacher and professor, right? When we read the student paper, if the student, they write perfect paper, definitely we would love to give them good grade, right? But if there's some student, they may not pay attention much about their style or grammatical errors, it's still tough. Right? It's still tough for us. Even in our heart, we want to give them good grade, but we have no choice.
Right. I'm finding that to be really the case this summer, since I've been teaching remotely, and they have due dates on all of their assignments, and they've got one series of assignments. All you have to do is write a paragraph that lets me know that you've read the book or you've seen the film. And about a third of them don't do it every single time. And they have a deadline, and it becomes frustrating. So what I have to do is I have to say it's not my fault, and it's not the other students' faults, but I have to give them no grade on the assignment, and we just move on. And when they see that 0 where there should have been 4 or 5 points, they usually do better the next time. And that's what I have to work with.
Yeah. How about you?
I go through the exact same thing with my students. It's frustrating when they're don't follow. I feel your pain.
Yeah. So again, that's what we have to do with life, right? Nothing could be satisfied for us. The only thing we can do is just accept the situation, move on. Yesterday, I have online meeting with my student. Instead of 12, I have only 4. That's okay. That's your choice. Yeah, that's why I love to teach college students. I don't want to babysit them in the low levels. So that's their choice. If they log in, they have credit. If don't, that's your choice.
It's a little better teaching college students. A little better.
So again, this is the principle, right? So nothing we can do. The only thing we can do is to change.
Right. Well, we get to treat them like adults.
Yeah.
If I were operating a store and they were my employees and they didn't come into work, we would have to talk about that. And I think the same thing applies for adult students, and I consider college students to be adults.
Yeah. About Stephen, what do you think at work? It's something that may frustrate you, right? At work, right? So how could you deal with those kind of problems at work?
You mean like hard situation at work?
Mm-hmm. So remember, we have 2 choices. Actually, we have many choices, but in general, the 2 main choices: either to accept and move on, or to fight back.
Most of the time, depending on the situation, I will always try first, number one, do the right thing based on, you know, how like some company, you're always going to have some proper process and procedure that you have to follow. As long as I am following it correctly, then yes, I will go forward. And there's many times to where some situation to where you just cannot completely resolve due to a situation. Just like you say, you're just going to have to accept it and move on, knowing the fact that it's not your fault or your company's fault. You just got to go on and accept that, and you hope that the customer will understand. Current situation right now is due to COVID pandemic, it is causing havoc to one thing would be shipping company. Well, if the shipping company is struggling with delivering our products from overseas manufacturing to here in North America, whether it be the actual product itself, and that sometimes we manufacture and build based on raw material, we have to get it from overseas or wherever it's coming from. Well, the shipping company right now globally is having difficult with, you know, shipping things everywhere. So with that being said, you know, we're delaying getting the product to our customers, what I'm indicating at here. Sometimes we can get it in a timely manner. Most time it's been delayed like easily a month and a half. And customers coming back and getting very agitated and angry and say, hey, where's our product? You know, and over. But that's the situation right now. But we're just trying to do our best in how to alleviate and get, who knows, maybe something comparable to help them out in the meantime. That's one little thing that we can do, but sometimes we can't. We're just going to go accept it and apologize to the customer and hope that they are understanding, and we just move on. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so let's move on to the second article. connect with the first one. That's why I choose these two articles. Maneuvering difficult emotional terrain in psychotherapies. So here in these articles, actually, let's go back here. William,
Yes.
How much you understand about these articles?
Okay. Yeah. So this is part of what I was talking about the first time, is that they were highlighting, well, the first article highlighted some of the differences in the way that like Aristotelian system looks at emotions and sees like even anger or desire in the right situation could be an appropriate emotion. But in Buddhism, we see clearly the damage done by identifying with and acting out of anger or desire, or even like repressing it, you know? And this is like a roadmap, a bird's eye view for psychologists who are interested to begin to understand some core Buddhist concepts and how they can go into psychotherapy, which I think is so cool. And we already touched on the idea of the difference between starting with a problem and then trying to solve a problem through like using thinking. And in Buddhism, it's very clear. Like at Rochester Zen Center, they do affirming faith and mind, and they have a phrase in that one. It says, to seek great mind with thinking mind is certainly a grave mistake. So like if we have some sort of disruption in our mind and we try to then use our thinking, it's like we're keeping the problem in place, because we're not allowing the mind to still and, you know, release whatever the issue is, but instead we're staying engaged with it. And then we're just going to only be able to kind of shift it, change it, maybe make it a little bit better, but there's still going to be a problem because we're reacting to it. And then we like have our identity relative to it. So then we tend to like go talk to people about it, and we can spend years going to psychiatrists talking about the problem and it feeling like we're getting a little bit better, but it's kind of more of the same thing, where the Buddhist philosophies can really right away bring a sense of peace if there's an understanding of it. Like the concept of sitting with something, where if we have a compelling emotion or feeling that there's a tendency to drive us towards some sort of action, or there's a tendency to judge it and to try to like do something about it, if we can be present to it and simply like acknowledge that it exists within awareness, and there's nothing we have to do about it, we can experience its impermanence. If we stay with our awareness, then gradually we'll be like, we won't have that feeling. Our mind will switch onto something else. We'll become distracted about it, or it'll just clear while we're still aware, and we won't even have the issue anymore. So I think the idea of sitting with it, which is like a type of mindfulness, super cool. Of course, the middle way is always crucial, like, because some of this stuff can be really exciting and like want to be like, oh, this is the truth. I'm going to run after this 100% and totally reject all of these different things. And we can actually end up kind of doing the same thing, being extreme when we're trying to come to balance. So acknowledging this middle way that we need to, like, in all dynamics, like not just about like indulging in food or being ascetic about eating food, but even about like how compassionate we are to ourselves and other people. Like there being a balance where for each individual, we have to acknowledge like where we are, because someone who at a very high level, you know, they could cut off their flesh and give it to someone and never have a negative thought about it. But, you know, if I did that for years afterwards, I would be thinking about, oh gosh, was that the right thing? And I would probably suffer. So I love the idea of how they highlight the middle path and that it's relative to each individual person. And the idea that, you know, we're not trying to separate ourselves from everyone with the healthy interdependence. We don't want to be like totally dependent upon other people for our happiness. But we like in that concept, we hear the middle way again, where there clearly is some sort of differentiation where they mention like, okay, if I am hurting because of loss, no one else is going to feel the hurting just like I'm feeling it. There is something distinct in that experience. But, you know, other people also have loss, and there is this like, there is a connection and there is a reliance upon other people to a certain extent, for a great extent, because, you know, we wouldn't have the food we eat. We wouldn't have the houses that we live in. So we are neither isolated nor totally dependent. Like we have this balance. And that's one of the common themes in psychotherapy, this idea of codependence, or this idea of not being able to accept help from anyone. And in Buddhism, there's this really beautiful answer. And then of course, compassion. I mean, bringing compassion into psychoanalysis. I mean, that seems essential. I don't see any healing progressing thoroughly without their compassion being a part of it. So these reminders are so great. It's like I've had them so many times, but every time that like the freshness of getting that, the struggle is really in my mind. Like the struggle is not in the outer world, but it's in my mind thinking that the outer world needs to be a certain way, or even that my inner world needs to be a certain way, and staying active in trying to change it in order to achieve happiness, as opposed to being present, allowing things to settle, and then getting to experience outer glow, maybe very far, far, far distant glow of sukha, where someone, you know, which I'm not living in sukha, but that there's this like radiance that we can begin to feel as we let go of. Even if we have an active problem, the time when we're present in that, it's like it's not a problem. It might come back when we get up and move around and start thinking. But it seems to be less. And like with returning to it, it can tend to make habitual patterns softer and less problematic. So thank you.
You sit with middle path, healthy interdependence and compassion. We want to speak to you the most. Thank you.
I think, man, actually, one has to have compassion for oneself to heal. And it's not going to be based on what it is that if we focus on other people, we put our own issues in a framework that we didn't see before.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Michael, what do you think? Which one speak to you the more? Sitting with middle path, healthy interdependency, and compassion. Which one do you think?
I'm really interested in all of them, and actually, what William was saying really opened up a lot for me. It was very helpful. But one of the things that I thought about sitting with, the English poet John Keats would talk about one of the qualities of a good poet is to be able to rest in uncertainty without moving immediately to answer your questions. And he said, this is a quality of all great poets. And sitting with kind of reminds me of that sense of being present to an idea, a situation, a circumstance, without having to find an answer for it or fix it right away. And it's kind of the way I was thinking about sitting with. And it was really refreshing to me also to see how the middle way is not only kind of the spiritual walk that I've been reading about and thinking about, but it's very, very practical in terms of psychological health. And that when people, Western psychologists, begin to recognize this, and there are a number of them that I know of who are, that it makes for that kind of practice of psychology that leads us toward wellness again, rather than just toward patching the scars and the wounds.
Yeah, thank you. And William, in these articles, the authors mentioned so many times about the difference between react and respond. You recognize that, William? React and respond. What's the difference?
Yes. So reaction, there's no reflection. It's going to be based out of if we consider the 12 links where we have contact and then we have a feeling, then it's just straight from that feeling. It's like whatever it is, it's there, whether it's actually true or not, we just jump and run with it. And reaction tends to come out of an absence of mindfulness. Whereas a response, there's, a greater mindfulness of one, like our internal state of whatever the situation called forth in us or brought out in us, but also how what we'll do will affect the other people. A reaction is like, we don't even care. We don't care what is going to happen from our reaction. This is just what we're going to do no matter what. We're not even thinking about achieving a particular goal. We're just caught up in the feeling and how we think things are.
Okay, thank you, William. Thân Thiện, you recognize the difference between react and respond? Thân Thiện, you understand that? You understand what William just mentioned?
Yeah, more of that. When we interact with other people or with something, and we react by not thinking properly, we do something something unreasonably. We just say if someone try to yell at us and we act with the anger instead of think properly before we react. And for response is like so if we have an anger issue and we so when the angry emotion arises, and we try to find a way to respond to this anger issue by doing something. to deal with this anger instead of reacting with the anger.
So in Zen traditions, sometimes the Zen master drag life away. Is that different from the common people? How they drag? Like Lynchie, right? To hit people, right?
Right. Yeah, so there is a difference between reacting and responding. So reacting is more like in the doctor's office when they bang you on the knee, and they bang your knee and your knee just goes flying. And it's the same way when there's some stimulus and then it's a knee-jerk type of reaction. Whereas responding is more whole and considering the whole of, just as William said, what's going on within me, but also what's going on within this whole situation. And so whenever, Lynchie hits or shouts or something, those situations seem to me that they're more response, because the response is doing something that this teacher thinks that the student needs. And sometimes something physical is more, that's direct. It's more direct than just saying, okay, yes, we'll do this. So.
I remember that when I was in Vietnam, I think when it was 5th or 6th grade, and one day my teacher, the male teacher, came into the class, and he's so nice to us. And the student took advantage of that all kind of chaos. They ran around, they messed with each other, and the teacher just sat there quietly. What happened? He flipped the table. Boom! Everyone cooled down. No one could speak. Is that right or respond? And actually, that teacher was so nice. When we were in our country, during those times in the 80s, most were poor. And our student took advantage of his kindness, that usually he would bring the new pencil to give to the poor children or students that didn't have the brand new pencil, pencil even during those times it's just like even like cell phone. It's just because during those times it's pretty hard economically. So our friends, our classmates took advantage of that. So sometimes they broke in half and said, "Teacher, I need the new one." That's why when they came in and they run around and they chit chat each other, files, glue through the paper and so forth. And he just sat there. And after that, he just flipped the table. Boom, I went cool down. Again, some teacher did that, right? So how was that? Is that the sporting or the acting? What do you think?
I think it would depend on the teacher. I did something very similar. I tumped over the desk once.
Oh, really?
On the frustration of my class. That was definitely a reaction. But after I saw the response to the stimulus, I would do similar things in the future to bring them back. But it was planned at that time. But the first couple of times, that was my emotion.
Yeah. So that's why I want to follow what you just said. Yes, most of the time, if we couldn't control our emotion, we think, we need to cool down the student mind by flipping that table to make the red sound so that they can stop. But actually, it's our anger, our frustration. But when Lynchie or the Zen master, when they hit the student, it's not out of their anger. They out of their compassion. They want to teach the student.
That's why they yell in the compassionate way, because they have purified their mind. That's what the difference there. Yes, William. Yes.
This conversation it's so interesting to me because this morning in the shower, I remember the time when I was at Rochester Zen Center at Chapin Mill, and it was when we were working on it, and then we had taken a break and was doing Zazen, and then I can't remember if it's Dokusan or Daisan when you meet with the Roshi. And yeah, I think it was the setting. I don't think it was the session. And Roshi Bodhin Kolhid, when I came in to sit down, he after not like saying anything first, the first thing he did was he leaned over, he grabbed my knees and shook me and said, "This isn't Zen." And I was thinking about it this morning, and it's just how everything connects with, you being here today and the topic that we're covering. And then that thought came into my mind because my mind automatically was like assessing it just out of the blue. I haven't thought about that. I think about it every once in a while, but out of the blue is assessing it. And I caught the assessment. Like I caught this weird, like bit of judgment that I wouldn't endorse at all, because I understood it was coming from a place of compassion. And I like immediately saw that and thought it was kind of odd that there was that moment there. And then we have this conversation today, just later in the evening. I don't know. It makes me smile.
It's called coincidence. All right, good. Let's come up. Thank you. Yeah. So you enjoy the articles, right? Try to incorporate those articles with our teaching. Our discussion about the 12 condition. All right. So thank you. So see you next Friday then. Thank you. See you then. Yeah, please, Dr. Michael, please stay back.